You're this perp back with the video, and this is part 3 of my Little Fires Everywhere review. In today's video, I'll be talking about episode 6, 7, and 8. So I'm going to touch on episode 6 first, but before I do, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and follow me on Twitter at perfminded420. And I hope you enjoyed this video and check out my first 2 parts. Just tried something different with this series. Since it's a mini series, I didn't want to go episode by episode. Just wanted to kind of give people a different type of video. Hopefully, like I said, you guys enjoyed this video, and you know, this leans you to subscribe, because I would like to do this more often if this works out. But anyways, let's get into episode 6, and this is essentially where we get Mia's and Elena's backstory. Tiffany Boone is playing the younger version of Kerry Washington's character, Mia, and we get a lot more backstory on her, while at the same time we get a lot more backstory on Elena's character, that is played by Anna Sophia Robb. Now, these 2 young actresses play the shit out of their counterparts. We get more backstory on Mia's character, that, you know, that surprised me, that, you know, that vision she was having about this guy following her on the subway didn't actually get her raped or anything like that. It was just essentially she was holding a child for them, and she just ran off with Pearl. I find really interesting, and we see the parallels of these characters. These characters have a little bit more in common than they would want to believe. They're both kind of selfish in their own ways. You know, Elena is still Elena at this age, and she gets pregnant for the 4th time, and she's just not having it. And unfortunately, well, for her, she thinks that, you know, her world is coming kind of crashing down because she's pregnant again. She kind of blames the pregnancy and whatnot, and it really parallels to how she treats Izzy and how she is still carrying on with these same type of motives. But that's pretty much the whole gist of the episode 6. We get a lot more backstory on what happened with Mia's brother and just how her family sees her. Very similar situations, but very different at the same time. But this was an amazing episode, definitely one of my favorites. With all that being said, let's get right into episode 7, because this is where things get really dark. And so this episode begins with Lizzie and her best friend and what happened to her that summer. And they were closer, but her friend pretty much kind of turned on her, and this is why a lot of people started to look at her weird. And this is where this problem started to brew. You know, you got tensions brewing between Izzy and Elena, you know, Elena and Bill. While things the first day of court for Bebe Chow goes very well, which leads Elena to kind of turn things up and put pressure on Mia to pretty much stand down, or your past might come up in courtroom, which now Elena knows the whole truth about Pearl, which is going to set off a whole nuclear bomb within itself. But there's so much more going on in this episode. You got things going on between Lexi and Brian, Pearl and Trip, which Moody is not aware of, but I'll get back to that very shortly. Let's get to Lexi and Brian real quick, because they pretty much broke up. They're having differences and whatnot, so that's one thing that's fallen down. Meanwhile, Moody is kind of figuring out what's going on with Pearl, finds out that she's dating her brother, which that might turn into something else. Meanwhile, things are getting hectic with our characters, and I'm loving it. Like Mia, she's kind of feeling shook from what Elena knows, decides to not to testify, but kind of ends up changing her mind. Things between Elena and Izzy get even worse. And then you have Pearl and Mia going at it over financial issues and whatnot. She doesn't know the truth yet. So this is essentially the calm before the storm episode, where just all these characters are at kind of disarray. Mia ends up taking a stand and throws things through a loop. Elena and Izzy are just irredeemable at this point, and things are just getting insane. Who knows what's going to happen in this last episode, but I'll tell you what, I cannot wait, which is going to lead me into our very last episode, episode 8, the series finale. Now we have finally made it to the epic conclusion of this story. We have a lot to talk about, and this has to be the best episode of the entire series. Shouts to the actress and the actors that were a part of this series, first and foremost. So, you know, things are not getting any better between Elena and Izzy. Bridges are being burnt, and, you know, things are brewing between all of our different characters throughout this series. We have Linda, Elena's crazy ass friend, on the stand. She says some outlandish, borderline kind of racist ass remarks on the stand. Things look like it's starting to sway a different path, but I'll get back to that later on. As you know, this whole situation has even inspired people like Mia to do a little bit of project, buy all this flour, but that's another thing I'll touch on later on within this video. So now you get Linda and Elena kind of talking, and you kind of feel like Elena likes doing this, or she's kind of regretting certain things. It's kind of weird at first, but then you got my man Bill here. He is fed up. I'll also touch on what happens with his character in this as well. Pearl is a big factor into this story as well. She finds some things about Mia that does not please her. She confronts her about it, saying, you need to call these people up, the Ryans, the people that she was supposed to give Pearl to, or, you know, I'm done with you, I'm finished with you. And this gives Mia the courage to call the Ryans up and whatnot, and she can't really say anything, but she at least reached out to them. Where things over at the Richardsons are just really getting very, very explosive, as Elena is not done. She wants to get a win, so she's trying to figure out any type of dirt, though, that she could just find so she can win. And she finds out that Pearl, wink wink, was here and she got pregnant. She went to go visit one of her old friends, I guess, that the one that was working at the gynecologist. So that whole thing is coming back into play now. While you have Moody confront his brother Trip and Pearl, Trip and Moody get into a fist fight. This doesn't help the whole entire situation. It even makes Elena even more go a little bit more mad as the episode progresses. Meanwhile, we finally get the final verdict on, you know, Bebe and Linda's case, and Linda ends up winning, which was really sad. And, you know, Bill kind of called this, saying people like Bebe do not win, and it's always been about the rich and the poor. Moody makes this clear to Izzy as they're watching the news and seeing how this is played out, and Izzy now kind of has this back and forth with Moody, where she kind of finds out what exactly is going on with her sister, Lexi. She confronts Lexi about her abortion and pretty much gets laughed in her face. And I really feel bad for Izzy, man, because this whole entire series, she's been pretty much a verbal punching bag. It's fucked up, and you shouldn't do that to my favorite character. Izzy is definitely my favorite character up to this point, but this just adds more fuel to the fire, no pun intended, as we get this little lighthearted moment between Trip and Pearl. Now, I haven't been the biggest fan of this storyline. I really don't care about the whole messing around with the two brothers, but this was a pretty cool back and forth. Trip tells Pearl some things that she needs to know about herself, and vice versa. Pearl tells Trip what he needs to know and whatnot. And with all this going on, this leads Izzy to go visit Pearl, and they have a kind of back and forth, and kind of plants the whole seed of burning down things. But other than that, this was a really dope scene, a really touching moment, and it really gives Izzy some hope. But stay with me now. I know this is going for pretty long, but we're getting towards the end of the story. We have finally Bill confronting Elena for the lies that she's been telling for the last 15 years, and Bill finally exposes her, puts her whole shit on blast, and this just makes Elena just keep going further and further into the I don't give a fuck phase at all. And this leads her to go to Mia's house, her old house, mind you, and just start some shit with Mia, and kind of throw in the whole, Pearl was pregnant and she got an abortion. And I loved how Mia just came out with a smile on her face, be like, you don't even know what the hell's going on under your own house. She takes yet another L. She's just taking L's after L's, and it's just only getting worse to the point where she sees Pearl as she's walking out of the house and completely ignores her. And she starts to go drinking, or tries to find this cork opener, and just is starting to lose her mind. Meanwhile, you have Pearl and Mia have this really, cool back and forth where they're able to put all their bullshit aside and kind of figure out, hey, let's just get the fuck up out of here. Pearl doesn't even want to say her goodbyes and just wants to pick up and leave. And I really like that moment. It just brought them back together, where things at the Richardsons is just all over the place. And Bebe, child, do not worry. I won't forget about her. We'll go back to her towards the end of this video. She does some savage shit. But going back to everything that's going on, Pearl and Mia end up packing up and dipping. Pearl leaves something in the mailbox, which, Izzy saw them leave, and this just throws her the fuck off completely, and she starts to put gasoline on everything, and everybody runs into the house, and just runs into her room, I should say, and tries to stop her. And this was one of the hardest moments in this series, where Elena pretty much says, I wish I never had you. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but this destroys Izzy, and just makes her kids look at her completely different. Moody, Trip, and Lexi completely makes her look like a complete villain, and she storms out the house just completely fucking wrecked, yo. And I can't, even though Reese Witherspoon, I think, gave a fucking outstanding performance, that shit was fucked up. And it just adds to the layers of this series overall. But now the kids are completely over their mom, and they decide to finish what Lizzie started. And this is where the whole term little fires comes from. But even though, Mia's character kind of said it first, this kind of sets up everything she was talking about in that conversation with Izzy perfectly to a T, and they each light off a match and just burn the whole shit down. But they do get Elena out of there as well, but, you know, which leads to the whole entire episode wrapping up with Elena pretty much owning up to everything that she did, and she tells the cop, whatever, it's my fault that the house burnt down, because all this was pretty much her fault. She could have done better. She had choices, and she chose to sever things with Izzy. Who knows when that will fix itself? I don't know. They kind of just left it open-ended. Bebe Chow stole back her daughter, and they went off into Canada. Good for her, because fuck Linda. I told you, she did some savage shit. She got closure in this. Izzy, we don't know where she went. She just hopped on a bus and just dipped. She had this really cool little dream sequence, but she kind of has had her own happy ending, is going her own direction. Mia is another character that is kind of owning up to the shit she's done. She allows Pearl to go see her actual parents, and that's where their story kind of leaves off. Their story kind of has a more of a happy ending. I have to say, this whole entire series has just been fucking phenomenal. If you haven't recommended this to a friend, recommend this to a friend. All the performances have been stellar. Everything from Kerry Washington to Reese Witherspoon to the child actors on here. I know they're probably older and they're just playing teens, but everybody on here did a really good job. The story was very solid. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope I covered everything. I know I've been talking for a lot. It's very early in the morning. It's time for me to go get some sleep. But until next time, I'll see y'all later.
It's like this thing, this love-hate thing that the world has with success, period. I'm gonna get this shit done whether niggas like it, love it, hate it, whatever. I'm a savage, whatever I want, I'm going to get. Whatever I want, I have to get. I'm the greatest. If the other motherfuckers ain't gonna be the greatest, I don't even want them around me, man.